Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, in my effort to cut power back as much as I can, I have a test. I want to see if I can replace my workflow in web design production with a Raspberry Pi. I'm going to go ahead and give this a try for a week or two and see what ends up happening. Now, obviously, we can't replace video production. You need a lot bigger of a computer for that. Computer will stick around. Multimedia? Maybe. I don't really know. We'll just kind of have to look into that. But as far as web design, which is mostly manipulating servers, terminal-based work, it's text files, things like that, maybe a little bit of light graphics and such, I can probably replace that on a Raspberry Pi, and we are going to go ahead and give that a test. So what I did here is I ordered myself from CanaKit. Ooh, I got a nice present in. And so I ordered me a Raspberry Pi. Now I opened this guy up just to double check the contents, and I also dropped in here the USB drive, or the flash drive I'm going to be using for it. It's in here somewhere. Well, it was in here somewhere. I think it probably fell out or it landed somewhere else. So what I ordered from CanaKit is I ordered a Raspberry Pi for the 8 gig version. And I wanted to do the 8 gig version on this because the 8 gig version is going to be obviously the best in the class as of right now. So that guy there is going to be a good test. Obviously, a 2, not going to work. A 3 with 4 gigs, maybe. I also ordered with my kit. You can assemble your own kit from CanaKit. So I got a micro HDMI to full HDMI, so I don't have to borrow my other plug for that. And I also ordered a SD card with noobs, which I'm actually not going to use. I'm just going to use this for something else. And they did give us a SanDisk 32 gig one. It has noobs installed. Like I said, I'll be using that for something else down the road. But honestly, their 32 gig SD cards with noobs installed were already a good deal. I actually already have this 64 gig card laying around, so that's actually what we're going to use. They also threw in there a Samsung little adapter in there, so cool. I have a little adapter, I guess. So what we're going to do is I thought about what different builds to do, and who knows, I might try a few different builds and see if any of them are better or worse. Now, Manjaro obviously has an excellent build for this, but I don't really want to run something that rolls, something that's Arch-based for my main work production computer. And so I wanted to say something in the Debian family. There is a new Ubuntu Budgie, which is, in my opinion, the best Ubuntu version out there. But I'm still not sure I want to go with that. So what I'm actually going to be doing is I want to look at Debian. I've actually tried to do Debian for another production machine, but I end up having to go back to the Raspberry Pi OS. And I really don't want to do the Raspberry Pi OS. I think it's a little ugly, and I just kind of want to see in the event I can work with something else other than that. So over here, these are rasby.debian.net. These are the tested Debian images for the Raspberry Pi. You can see they have Bullseye out, but there are a few little issues with it yet. It's not fully out, and so I'm not going to play around with that. I'm just going to stick with the Buster 10. You can see here, tested with the Pi 4 gig, then everything works okay. And so, hey, that's really good. So we're going to go ahead and grab that guy. So I already downloaded it. And if I move my terminal over here, then so going full screen here and now showing you the terminal. Let's just show you that we have the file. It's this one here in red. That is the file, and now what we want to do is we want to do a checksum of this. So it's SHA-256 sum, and then the name of the file. This is going to pull in a checksum, and let me go ahead and pull up the checksum file so you can kind of see what that looks like there. And then here we're just going to be comparing our hash number here to our hash number here. And I'll usually just look at the first little bit of it, a spot that's easy to spot from the middle, and the last little bit of it. And you can see that everything there is matching up. So this is a good solid in production. So I guess what we will do now is we're just going to go ahead and flash this guy on. So it's going to pop my, I have a little SD card to USB drive that I use. We're just going to pop that guy into the system. And then that might pull something up because there's actually something on that. This is my old Plex server that I was experimenting with. But if I want to watch something on Plex, I can actually just go ahead and just use the public website instead. So let's go ahead and boot up our, let's boot this guy up. We're going to head on over to our downloads and then double click on our image, and it asks us where we would like to restore this to. Be very, very careful because I could actually overwrite my hard drive, and I do not want to do that. So 64 gig storage drive, that's the one we wanted to do, and we're going to go ahead and hit start restoring, and then we need to enter the password for the production computer here. So let's go ahead and do that. And now it is formatting the drive. It's restoring everything onto that. And then the next step we're going to do is we're going to plug this into the Pi and plug everything else into it. And then we will go ahead and have our Debian system. Now, once we get into here, I'm not going to go ahead and show you the initial setup and configuration. I don't think. It's just get into Debian, push the updates, install the packages that I need. So what are the packages? In web design, I'm going to use GIMP. I might do Inkscape. Occasionally, I will get some vector thing that needs done. I will use Evolution for my primary email, and I will go ahead and install Thunderbird for my all of my other non-business emails, just to be able to check personal email on the system as well. I will install a variety of different web browsers just for a variety of different testing purposes and things like that. So some of them will be main production, some of them will not be. And then we're going to go ahead and install Bluefish Editor, which is what I'm going to use for basic web design work. And there's FileZilla, of course. Definitely need that one for all the server management. And we need to make sure we have KeePassXC installed for the passwords that are already in my system. I'm sure that there's going to be some other applications I need to install as well. But what we'll do is I'm going to spend a little bit of time playing with this guy. We're going to get it all set up. And the first thing I'm going to do is I do have another case that I ordered. And I ordered this one a while ago. The CanaKit, which was a Raspberry Pi 4 with 8 gigs of RAM. The micro HDMI to full HDMI and the SD card was only $105, and it took 10 days to get to me. This, I don't remember exactly what this cost. I think it was less than 20 for sure. I just ordered it a while ago. And what I get with this box is I have a power cable with an on-off switch. Yay! I have a toggle on-off switch for my Raspberry Pi. And I have a nice Pi case. And I believe I went with the black for this case. Yes, it is black. These cases are available in white, black, and clear. And what I liked about this case is it had a, it has some heat sinks. It has a fan in it. And the way they have the fan hooked up into the 3-volt port, it should be a nice quiet fan, so you shouldn't be able to hear it. And there are also some mounting pins on the bottom. So this is what this guy looks like. So I have a nice case like this. And then you can see here you can pop just the top off separately. There's where the fan is at inside of it. And then there's a bunch of heat sinks. There's some mounting screws. Just a bunch of other little odds and ends down there. And then I believe the bottom also comes off as well. So you set the Pi in here. You mount the Pi in there with the Pi screws. Clip this guy on top, and then this guy comes off in the event you need to access any of the ports, which I personally don't, but it's a nice option in the event that I would need to. And I think this case was maybe 15 bucks. I can't remember for sure. So we're going to go ahead and put this guy into the case. I'll show you what that guy looks like after I have it into the case, and then we'll go ahead and get Debian up and running. We'll get everything up to date. We'll get the software on there, and then before I start to work, I'll go ahead and do some screen recording over there so you can see what it looks like, see how it works, how it performs. And then I'll play with it for a couple weeks. I'll see how many projects I can get done with it. I'll see, is it going to be limited? Is it positive, negative, whatever else that happens to be? And then I'll let you guys know in a follow-up at the end of this video how my project went. All right, so the first update after recording the initial intro where I didn't know exactly where we were going is we are not running Debian. I ran into a few different issues. The first and foremost, there's a few little issues. The first issue is I was trying to get hardware accelerated graphics, which I needed for Cinnamon. I couldn't get that working on anything, but that kind of fell to a secondary issue. I said, well, let's just use a different desktop environment. So I chose to go with Plasma instead. The biggest concern I had though, Debian, no matter how you compile the kernel, no sound. And audio is not a huge part of what I do on that computer, but it does have to have a component. I might need to watch a video. I might need to participate in a conference. I might need to do something where I need to plug in some headphones and have some actual sound. That is an important consideration. And so I did want to abandon that. So then that led the question, do I want to go with an Ubuntu base or do I want to go with something else? Well, the most mature is Manjaro. And so I said, let's just go ahead and go with Manjaro. Even though I did say in the earlier intro here a few minutes ago, I don't really want to go with a rolling system. I'm going to go ahead and go with a rolling system anyway. Why? Because Manjaro is beautiful. They have had a Raspberry Pi build for a long time, since Raspberry Pi was a thing. It is a good, stable distribution. It runs on the latest Linux kernel, which means it's going to have the latest advantage of the hardware advantages. And overall, out of the box, everything works. It's not an experimental distribution, and it's not the first go-around. And so with that, I then went ahead and played around with a few different desktop environments. First, I just could not get Cinnamon working without entering the software rendering mode, which makes Cinnamon unbearably slow. And so I said, well, sadness, I won't do that. Let's try Budgie. Well, I couldn't get a version of Budgie going that would allow desktop icons. And for this computer, I work on the desktop. All the active projects we're working on, they're on the desktop. That's actually how desktops were designed for. Believe it or not, I must just be an old boomer or something. But the fact of the matter is, yes, I did actually go in and need something with desktop icons. So I abandoned the idea of Budgie and GNOME for that matter. So I said, well, let's go with Plasma. I wanted something that's new and something that's modern, not something that feels old like XFCE and Mate can. But Plasma allows me to have all of those options. And so here, let's have a look at our desktop and see what it looks like. So here we are on the desktop, and overall, this guy's working fairly well. Let me give you just a little bit of the little nuances, the difficulties, the pros, the cons. First is a little kind of annoyance. The calendar, I want it to be smaller than this. And every time I set it smaller than this and reboot, it goes back to this size. I said, never mind. If you know how to lock that calendar to its size, for sure, let me know. Now, what I did want to do on this one is I want to use the dark themes most places. So your basic system applications, everything by default is going to be the dark theme. But there were some applications I had that were pretty much impossible to use. Bluefish Editor was difficult to use in a dark theme, so I went ahead and modified that theme file as per the video the other day and made this one load in a light theme instead. I did the same as Evolution, which I'm not going to boot up for the privacy of my emails and my clients' emails, but light theme Evolution works really well. Dark theme Evolution, not so much. What I have here down here in the panel, and these are all set up as quick launch icons, not these stupid click them and it'll open and then click it again and it'll minimize, annoying garbage in these modern operating systems. These are quick launch, so every time I load it, it will load a new instance of that application. Exactly the functionality I want. And I have two web browsers installed right now, those being Firefox and Chromium. Why those? Well, this is a web design computer. I'm not going to use something weird and obscure and small because if I do that, it means I'm going to have to go back into normie browsers at some point in time and see what my clients are seeing. So I just use these, and I probably will install some other browsers eventually down the road. I put all of the things that I use on a regular basis, on a day-to-day basis down here. I have KeePass. I have two databases, one of these being my master database list, the other one being my client database list, GIMP, Bluefish Editor, Console, the folder, just open up Dolphin. And then I have under my favorites, I use the other things that I use almost every day, but not as much. Compare, I found, is an excellent application for testing how two files are compared and merging together the changes, the differences between them. I actually use this in WooCommerce themes when you're developing a custom theme and the WooCommerce template's like, hey, the template's is out of date. And I go in and I have a look at it. Compare is the best way that I found. I used to have to go through and manually look at files on the old Windows development system. This works so much better. Flameshot, infinitely better screen capture than I used to use on Windows. We have our simple screen recorder, and I have a cat that's about to throw up, excuse me. We have LibreOffice over here. Usually I just use Writer. I don't use the other ones quite as much, but I can boot into those as I need. Simple screen recorder, which is what we're using now. FileZilla, I do use that almost daily, but more often than not anymore, I'm doing a lot more SEO stuff. Requires a lot less file transfers and just a lot more logging in and editing content. So this overall has just become a pretty much perfect design layout. Let me talk about a few of the challenges that I had. Obviously, I went with Manjaro, as I said earlier, because I was able to get everything to work well, modern systems. I really did want to use a Debian-based, but I said, you know what? Let's just go with Manjaro. It's going to work. It's going to be stable. I've really only had updates one time in about a week and a half. So that's actually certainly more than the Arch system that updates and then it updates again after a couple hours. But overall, the thing worked out really well. Now, Evolution. This one was a little bit of a challenge because we're running Plasma. So Evolution, a GNOME app, wants to save the passwords in a GNOME keyring, and by default, Plasma uses the KDE keyring. And because of that, or K-Wallet really is what it is. So because of that, I had to finagle some things in. So to get Evolution to work, what we actually needed to do is I had to install a few different software packages. Now, all of the documentation that I saw said to use Seahorse. The problem is I use Seahorse. I added this to the startup on SDDM, which is the Plasma startup system. The problem is that even that would not work. And so what I actually needed to do instead is I had to go in and I had to install Seahorse, but I also needed to install GNOME Keyring. So if you are running into that problem on a Plasma build, make sure you have both GNOME Keyring and Seahorse installed because it was not saving anything. Once I added that GNOME Keyring, then it went ahead and saved everything. So there we have it. One more thing we're going to do. Let's go ahead and have a look at KSysGuard just to see how our system resources are looking. And when we boot this guy up, remember that we are recording HD video on a Raspberry Pi. And this is the RAM memory use is pretty low, under a gig. The processors are running pretty high because, yeah, that whole HD video recording thing on the Pi. And then everything else, though, this guy's working well. So overall, absolutely, this guy is able to completely replace my regular workflow. And so with that, I may not even go back to the other system at all. I need to figure out what I'm going to do in accounting, and I'm tied up between using either accounting or GNU Cache, so I will figure that out in the coming weeks. But with that, let's go ahead and do a brief wrap-up. So now that we've seen the desktop, let's go ahead and talk about first thing I forgot to mention in the video. What about YouTube videos and things? Well, I had zero problem watching some YouTube videos over there. I was running them at 480p. I did not attempt to run them at 1080p or 720, but in reality, I'm trying to cut back data usage anyway in case they implement these dreaded caps. And so getting used to utilizing a little bit less data is a good thing. And unless something is like mission critical, I need to read the 12-point font on the screen, whatever you're doing, 480 is good. 480 worked flawlessly, no buffering, no skipping, no dropped frames. It worked perfectly over there. So YouTube videos, 480p works fine. I didn't test 1080p. I didn't test 720p, but 480 works beautifully. And since that's something that I just use occasionally, I have to occasionally watch a video for some, software package, whatever else. It's not a huge part of what I do over there, but it worked out well. So with that, can this replace my, my web design work? Absolutely. I'm able to take everything that I do on the web design, I'm able to distill it down, run it all on a Raspberry Pi with 8 gigabytes of RAM, and that power consumption is down to 8.8 watts. So that will make Greta very happy. So with that, I will encourage you, if your workflow has minor graphic edits, mostly development, Word document type things, like TextPad document type things, in my case, Bluefish editor code, looking at checking emails, looking at web browsers, a Raspberry Pi is going to work for you. I would encourage you to try it out. Now, I'm not sure I'd go with the lower ends. I went with the highest one, the 8 gig RAM. It was still only $75, and that's not a bad thing. I paid $105 for a Raspberry Pi 4 with 8 gigs of RAM. I got a dedicated micro HDMI to HDMI cable. I got a card with noobs, and that was shipping as well. $105. That is a really good price. That was directly from Canikit. It took, I think, 10 days to arrive from the time I ordered it. So I encourage you to try that out. Now, you're not going to be able to do that if you're doing video production. Obviously, it's not going to work. Any intense graphics, probably not going to work. You're probably not going to be gaming on it. Certainly nothing AAA or anything like that. But overall, if we're just talking about emails, web browsers, development, basic development stuff, absolutely, the Raspberry Pi is perfectly capable of taking over your main little work computer, minimizing the power usage for about $100. So definitely give it a try for your work. Let me know your thoughts on all this, and have you tried this, and is this something that interests you, in the comments down below. Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.